Welcome to our podcast, She's Bridging the Gap, where we're on a mission to bridge the gap through conversations that inspire change and build lives, businesses, and healthier minds. I'm Sam D, and I'm a certified nutrition coach and personal trainer.
I'm Hanah Harvey, and I'm a business coach and strategist.
And I'm Kendra Garrett, a mindset and accountability coach. In this podcast, we're going to bring you the tools you need to bridge the gap between your health, wealth, and relationships. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of She's Bridging the Gap. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are in for a treat because we hear Hanah's story of how she transitioned into the role that she's in now and how we can learn from her. Hanah, you want to take it over?
Awesome. Well, thank you for the lovely introduction, and I'm so happy to be talking to you guys today about my story. So, like Kendra said, I'm Hanah. I am a business coach and strategist, and I help online business owners grow their businesses to six figures without sacrificing all of their family time and being able to have like the schedule of flexibility that we all want as business owners who get to work from home. So, of course, I didn't start out in the place that I am today. So I wanted to just share with you a little bit about my journey to how I'm sitting in this chair right now. So I started my business a little over 4 years ago in December 2018. I think around the same time Sam did, I think, and Kendra both. We started all around the same time. And I started my business as a virtual assistant. And my goal for starting my business was pretty much so that I could be the stay-at-home, work from home parent and be able to like be the mom that I'd always wanted to be, because my husband and I have been together since high school, and we had our kids' names picked out when we were in high school, and we knew we just wanted to be parents, and we wanted to be able to give our kids a life that we didn't get to have, and we wanted to be able to like take them on all the adventures, do all the fun things, and we knew that that wouldn't be able to happen off of like a single income or us both trying to work at the same time, full time. And so that is the whole reason I started my business, was to pretty much be a fully present mom, just be able to give them something different, have like more adventures and more fun. And so I started my business as a virtual assistant, and it was awesome until it wasn't. I put so much like time, energy, effort into getting clients, then maintaining the clients, that I felt maxed out, overwhelmed, honestly, and underpaid. And it was because I was still stuck charging hourly. I wasn't doing a specialized niche, and I had zero boundaries with my clients, right? And all of that was going on at the same time where my husband and I were at the place where like, okay, we're financially stable enough, we can go ahead and try for kiddo number one. And so we tried for kiddo number one, we got pregnant, and which we're super grateful for. And it was a really rough pregnancy, like really rough. I had HG the entire time. I had to go to the hospital, get fluids. Like it was really, really rough. And of course, I wasn't able to show up in my business as much as I wanted to, or like I barely was able to fulfill on my commitments with my clients because I was so sick. And so it finally, some of my clients were like wondering what was up, because, I kind of like faded into the background, did what I needed to do, but like just wasn't as present as I had been before. And so it was time to finally tell everyone that I was pregnant. It was a little bit of a rough pregnancy, totally underselling it. And like I was super excited to announce it, right? And one of my clients, she was my biggest retainer. I was managing pretty much the back end of her business, and I was so excited to announce it because, again, like this is the whole reason I started my business, right? Like when I went to church camp as a kid, like I wrote in my 5-10 year plan was to be a mom. Like that's what I always wanted to do. And so I announced it to this person, and she was disappointed. And I was like, what do you mean? Why are you disappointed? I can't believe it. And as I'm sitting there, I can still remember exactly where I was sitting in the recliner, because the more horizontal I was, the less sick I would be. And I'm leaning back in the recliner, and I'm like, what? Why is she disappointed? And I came to the realization that it was because I wasn't going to be making her my number one priority anymore, or my business my number one priority anymore. I was going to be making my kid my number one priority. And so that shift in priorities was going to mean that I wasn't going to be over giving, and I wouldn't be like as present for her that she wanted me to be. She wasn't paying me to be that present, but she wanted me to be that present. And that's when it kind of clicked for me, that I was like, well, okay, something's got to give. I started my business so that I could be a fully present mom. And here I am at this point where it feels like I have to choose between being a fully present mom and being an awesome VA business owner. And so that's kind of the point where I was like, okay, something's got to give. I got to really step into something else. And so that's when I stepped into a specialized niche, and I started to become really unapologetic about my boundaries and how I was running my business, which copywriting was my niche of choice. I love writing. And so when I niched into copywriting, it was mind blowing. And especially with like creating the boundaries, where I was able to literally 20x my income by working less time, like cut the amount of time I was in the office by half. And it was so freeing to have those boundaries, because I don't know about any of you guys, but whenever I would leave the house, my phone would have to come with me. And I even bought like a bag that my laptop could go in. So like I would be reachable wherever I was. Starbucks drive-through, had my laptop ready to go just in case someone needed me, right? And being able to like put the boundaries in place where like you can't have access to me 24/7 was so freeing. And so like, I don't know, just brought things to a whole different realization that like, okay, the whole reason why I started my business is now how I get to conduct my business, to be a mom and to have that sort of space and energy to be able to do that. So that was the first part of my journey. And a couple months into becoming a copywriter, like I was able to hit like the six figures and have those big money months. And I was actually able to retire my husband, which was amazing. And a couple months after retiring him, we got to the point, which of course was never the goal in the beginning, but then it was like, oh, well, of course, if I can make this much per month working this much, of course, you don't need to work, like come home, right? And so a couple months after he came home, he stopped his job. I felt the call that I needed to start teaching people and coaching people how to do that transition from feeling overworked, underpaid, maxed out, into stepping into a business that gets to support the way people want to actually live their life. And so that's where I started one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and my course, the Fulfilled Mama course. And now I get to help people through that transition. So that's a little bit about my story.
Well, so I was gonna make a point whenever you're talking about, which this is what so many of us do. We start our business and we're like, this is to stay home and be with our kids, and that is our main priority. And then all of the things start to roll in, and your client needs this and your client needs that, and you are constantly on call because you think like, it's almost, people haven't gone through those waters yet, so they don't really know what boundaries they need to have in place until they're already being encroached upon. So that is something I know I can relate to that as well, of having your laptop ready to go whenever, I'm going to the city or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
that's not healthy in the long run. So I think so many people can relate to that, of like, what is your priority of why you started this business, and what are those boundaries that you're creating to protect those values of why you started it.
Oh yeah. And I think it's really easy to have zero boundaries when you start your business, because at your 9 to 5, you essentially had zero boundaries, right? Like anyone could contact you for anything between the hours of 9 to 5 when you're in your office or whatever. And then you bring your business home and you have your business at home. And then it feels like, okay, anyone can contact me 24/7 because it's here, it's available. Like, oh, sure, I could wait till tomorrow to finish that, but I could just do it right now and get it off the list, right? And so I think when we don't have like a framework or a blueprint for how our businesses should support the way we actually want to live, it's really, really hard to have the boundaries that say, no, I'm not available to do that right now, or actually, I'm taking my kid to the zoo today, but I can for sure tackle this task for you tomorrow.
How did you make that transition with your clients that had already encroached upon those boundaries? How did you kind of put those up since they weren't set to begin with?
Yeah.
What process did you take to have that conversation with them and actually start applying those boundaries with those current clients?
Yeah. I mean, step number one was going back and looking at like, okay, what was the agreement that we actually had, right? Like, what was in the contract? What did it say? I'm only available between these hours? Did it say that like 24-hour notice, like whatever it was? And depending on, most of the time, like I had those already in my contract, and a lot of us do, right? We just don't actually enforce them. And so it was like, okay, what did the contract say? What did we agree upon? But what do I need right now? Right. And so it's kind of like just having, I call them difficult conversations because they're not our favorite things to do. And I'd always go into them with 3 different scenarios, right? Like best case scenario, what's a win-win, and what's a we're going to part ways because we can't agree on something, right? And being okay with each of those scenarios and just going for it. Like it's going to feel awkward. It is awkward. It's going to feel hard, but on the other side of that call is you getting one step closer to your dream business. So there was a little bit of a phasing out the people who weren't ready to, like, I don't want to say adhere to my boundaries, but respect my boundaries. And I think that also came down to them respecting me as a human being and not just seeing me as someone who like helps them perform tasks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question to piggyback off of that. So if somebody is in the position that you were in, where you are now putting those boundaries into place and niching down, what should they have in place before they go in and have those conversations? Like, should they be, if somebody's relying on a higher paying client to help them pay their bills that month, what would you say to them? What should they have in place just in case?
That's a really good question, because there's always like those scenarios where like I've totally been there too before, where I had a client who wasn't necessarily respected my boundaries, but I was needing their cash flow in order to meet our like break even point, right? And so I think the first thing that we need to know before hopping into those conversations is, okay, what do I really want out of my business? And what is my break even point? Like if we put all the bills together, all the payments that we're making, add them all up, what is the amount? Like subtract your spouse's income if your spouse is working, and like, okay, how much do I need to be making in order to like put food on the table, right? In order to live, have a little bit of fun. But what is that number? And then just evaluating, okay, what clients do I have? Are there, and doing like a client audit to see what clients do I have that aren't respecting my boundaries, but where is the cash flow at? How can I like shuffle these around, or do I need to replace this client before I even have that just difficult conversation with them? Because I think there's a lot of times we wish like the changes can happen like overnight, but the reality is sometimes it can take like 30 days or more to really start shifting things and setting those boundaries and like just changing the way you're doing your business. It's not going to happen overnight because it took that much time to get to where you're at now. And so realizing that it might take time and it might just be a season of transition, if that answers your question.
It does.
What would be the first step you would recommend to someone who is feeling that overwork and overwhelm? What is that very first step that you would give to someone in that position? Just take that first step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Step number 1 is going back to why you actually started your business in the first place. We all have that like notebook. I know I still have it in my closet. When I first sat down, I was first starting my business and I wrote down my whys and my goals, right? My time, my money, my goals around like friends and family, location, like all of those goals that I had written down, and going back, looking at them and like, are these still your goals? And is the business that you're currently running supporting or helping you get one step closer to those goals every single day? If the answer is no, then that's the first place to start, right? Like, what boundaries and shifts can you put into place to start making your business support the dreams and the goals that you actually started your business in the first place to get?
Going back to the why is always, it's like that emotional trigger that makes you rethink everything that you're doing. And that's a good evaluation too of, does this serve this goal, or does this serve why I'm doing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Because I think we forget, like, we start our business and we're like all excited that it's going to give us like all the freedom that we want, right? And then somewhere along the way, we get stuck in the busy, the day-to-day, and we forget why we actually started our business. And we're like out here pursuing something that maybe isn't even something that we want to pursue. Or maybe it's like not getting us closer to a goal, but it's getting us closer to an achievement, but not what we actually want. And so just going back to your why is how you can figure out like what, that's step number one. And that's going to tell you what step number two needs to be.
So this was so good, Hanah. I love how you are helping women take their business to that next level. And I know that there are people listening to this that need to know where to find you. So where can they find you?
I hang out mostly on Facebook. Facebook.com/Hanah M. Harvey is where you can find my personal profile. But the best place to reach me and to hang out and get awesome value, free value weekly in live trainings is inside the Fulfilled Mama Collective. And we'll put that link. It's a free Facebook group. We can put that link in the show notes.
Thank you so much for all of your tips and advice, Hanah. Always revisiting your first steps forward and all of that is always good for me to revisit here as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. On every level.
You can find our podcast, She's Bridging the Gap, on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and on YouTube if you want to watch the live video chat.
You can subscribe to our channel now so you don't miss a single episode.
And we're so excited to start helping you build your bridge.